It starts back in Hue on a drizzly morning as we explore the fascinating Imperial City and intricate tomb of Emperor Tuduk. After that, we travel south to Da Nang, exploring its past as the Champa Kingdom. From Da Nang, we visit Hoi An, Champa ruins and temples, all while it rains mercilessly and coastal winds blow. It's a test of time and rain, watching how this patchwork of histories endures the harshness of nature. Hue was the capital of the Nguyen dynasty, which ruled Vietnam from 1802 to 1883. The Imperial City here is a complex fortified by a citadel, with administrative offices, the private quarters of the royals, as well as gardens and villas for their leisure and enjoyment. There were numerous inscriptions on gates and in the palaces that looked like they contained Chinese characters. This is Chu Nok, the old script of Vietnam. It was inspired by the Chinese characters, and though the meanings are similar, they have different pronunciations. The palaces suffered heavy damages during Vietnam's wars with France and America. Many artifacts like royal seals and even the rooms themselves were reconstructions, their original counterparts destroyed. Nonetheless, parts of the old city have stood the test of time, and of the harsh 40-degree summers and humid winters. These old towers and arches, peeling and covered in moss, continue to stand. There's also a lot of cultural fusion, not just between China and Vietnam, but Eastern and Western styles, as one of the palaces was built in the French style. The walls are lined with pictures of the Nguyen's and other elites, since they lived in a time where they already had cameras. 200 years is a long time ago, but at the same time it's still eerily recent. In the afternoon, we visited the tomb of Emperor Tuduk. Most of the Nguyen kings have their tombs outside the city of Hue. The kings chose and designed their own tombs. Tuduk, who ruled during a period of turmoil where the French began to take over Vietnam, retreated from the chaos of the court to plan his own tomb. Tuduk's tomb is known as one of the most beautiful and is also accessible for tourists. It's a huge complex with a large pond going around the whole site and little pagodas. There was a temple dedicated to his minor wives too. My favorite feature of the tombs is the intricately made dragon scales, created from pieces of broken porcelain, each clearly part of another piece of ceramic, with its own unique design or wording. Tuduk also left an inscription in Chu Nok, explaining how he chose his tomb and how he wishes to be remembered. He was of ill health since he was young, but still lived till his 50s. He enjoyed poetry and designed his tomb according to feng shui principles. He called his tomb modest, which is hard to fathom as a modern person. How can this be modest? But perhaps compared to the wealthy kings of China, this was indeed modest for a king. During his reign, Tuduk continued to suppress Catholicism and keep Vietnam isolated from the forces of modernization. He was also ineffective against the cholera outbreak, French colonialism, and attacks from the Chinese. But at the same time, he was clearly someone learned and artistic, who felt deeply about the arts. I can't help but feel sympathy still. After all, kingship was inherited and one did not choose to take on such a role. Surrounding the ancient citadel, Hue is a modern city by the Perfume River, or Song Hung. We found a street for tourists, backpackers, and locals alike, with loud music and drinks, just like any other big city would have. Yet, Hue was also like being in the clouds. It was lively, but still serene, the air cool each night. We ate a lot, like ban siu, a mung bean pancake, bun bo hue, which is hue beef noodles, and other lovely dishes. There were so many cafes here too, and we stopped for a delicious salt coffee, which is coffee with salted milk foam. Delicious, and it wasn't very sweet like a lot of the others you get in Vietnam. Our last night, we visited the rooftop bar of our hotel, just as the clouds rolled in, hiding the city behind thick fog. It was a magical scene. The next morning, it was time to leave Hue, and leaving felt like falling out of the clouds into a very different place. Da Nang, where we were headed, was larger than life. Big hotels lining the hills and the extensive coastline. It was noisy and rather hot. But Da Nang itself is also rich in history, being part of the Champa Kingdom. The Cham people are believed to have emigrated from Borneo to central Vietnam 2,000 to 3,000 years ago. The language is most closely related to Achinese, though scholars still struggle to decipher it. They practice Hinduism, which is seen in many of the monuments they left behind. The Marble Mountains, near the beachfront, are 5 limestone peaks named after the 5 elements. Most people climb Dui, the mountain representing the element of water, where many shrines and a lookout point are located. It used to be a worship site for the Champa, and many of the shrines were built by the Nguyen kings who passed through the mountains. We started with a hike to the peak, where there was a beautiful view of all of Da Nang under the setting sun. Here, they even have the divine clock, which decides whether people go to heaven or hell after they die. It was a blend of Buddhist, Hindu, and Taoist influences. The next day, it began to rain. The rainy season is relentless here, not waning by much even in its last month. We visited Mison Sanctuary, a UNESCO site that dates back to the 300s AD to the 1200s AD. Built by the Champa people, this is a complex of Hindu temples. Parts of it have been rebuilt following destruction during wars and natural decay, but parts of it remain, ancient and unwavering, in spite of the heat, rainstorms, flood, and war. Our guide told us that the Champa used a specific type of binding agent that could withstand natural disasters, and to this day we can only guess what they used. They have their own script we still struggle to understand, truly an intriguing lost civilization. Among the artifacts was also one of the Buddha, its hands right at the top of the triangle, representing the unattainable level that humans cannot reach, only gods. This is symbolized by the fact that no one can make their thumbs meet while the head is facing the front, which represents the workings of the gods that are beyond human capabilities. It's not very well preserved, some might say. Lots of rebuilding, old walls covered in mud, wet and sandy from the rain. But in such harsh conditions, Mison continues to shine. As the rain continued, we took a boat down the Blue Born River, which took us to Hoi An, a peaceful meeting place in both Chinese and Vietnamese. This old town, a UNESCO heritage site, was near a trading port where Japanese and Chinese merchants settled as early as the 1500s. Inside, there were paintings of gods, and tourists wrote well wishes in yellow, the color of the kings, that they hoped would be granted. We learned that there are 4 mythical animals in Vietnam: the phoenix, the dragon, the turtle, and the unicorn, all of which can be seen here. The rain was relentless, but gave the old city a tranquil atmosphere on film. In reality, it was crowded with tourists and quite cold from the heavy rain. But things go on here, in spite of the weather. Next, we visited the famous Japanese bridge which leads to the Japanese Quarter. Near the bridge, there's even a house whose inhabitants have been living here for generations, in spite of the yearly floods. On the wall, there are markings of how high the water level has reached in past years. We stopped in a cafe for coconut coffee, which is well known in Hoi An. We also had cơm ghé and cao lao, which are Vietnamese chicken rice and noodles respectively. Cao lao is so chewy and we really enjoyed the noodles. Cơm ghé is like a lighter, healthier version of Hainanese chicken rice with broken rice instead. And of course, at night, the river was beautiful, with lantern boats floating down it. As we made our way to the night markets, it was chaotic and the rains would start and stop multiple times, the streets crowded with tourists. But if anything, this only showed why Hoi An is so beloved, and it's not hard to see why. Our first night in Da Nang, we visited the beach, the waves of the eastern sea hostile and rough in the winter months, the northeast monsoon winds directing their ebb and flow. Yet the weather was still pleasant. We walked by the beach, ate more bun sale, as well as these chewy noodles which were delicious, probably cao lao. The next night, after braving a day of rain in Mison and Hoi An, the wind was howling by the coast when we returned to Da Nang. The following day, we went to Sin Cha Peninsula, which is near the start of the Hai Van Pass. With views of the rugged coastline and the city, it is a popular destination in the summer, but by the coast in the winter, it is a rather different story. The rain and howling winds came and went relentlessly like the tides. Yet, we still saw the tall statue of Guan Yin that you can see from the coast in Da Nang, watching over the city and protecting its vast waters. We sought solace with the other tourists in the shrines when the winds got too big and got to glance out at the eastern sea. We paid a visit to the beach in the afternoon. The waves even rougher this time, the sky overcast with rolling thick clouds. So we spent the rest of our afternoon in the hotel, but even then the swimming pool was quite the sight, the wind blowing so strongly it became a wave pool, water flying off the edges in quick strokes. The weather is erratic here. As it clears and gets misty, rains and stops raining, over and over again in quick flashes. Alas, it was our last night and we still ventured out for seafood in the howling wind, and it was delicious. Our final day in Da Nang, our umbrellas were bewitched by the coastal winds. The beach was alluring, rough and cold, its winds threatening to carry us with it. We saw the beach one last time standing on its sand, and from the sky at our hotel's pool, watching the clouds roll in and retreat, Guan Yin appearing and disappearing from the mist. I'm now back home in Singapore, where it's always hot, but the weather is much milder. It's been a few days since we've returned, and it has not stopped raining in central Vietnam. It's incredible how things both old and new go on there, standing the test of time and